Tell me who's that riding? John the river leader. Tell me who's that riding? John the river leader. Tell me who's that riding? John the river leader wrote the book of the seven seals. Who's that riding? John the river leader. Well, who's?
Hey guys, how's everybody doing? It's Craig here from Bass Lessons Melbourne, and today for the player profile video interview I'm joined by Mr. Reggie Hamilton.
How are you, man?
Good, man. How are you?
Well, thanks.
Really appreciate you taking the time out to sit down with me. So you're in Australia with Chris Botti.
I am.
Yeah, how's that been going?
It's been great. I mean, I've been doing the gig about 6 weeks.
Okay.
And great people. Chris is great. Loves tone. He's really focused on that, which is cool because I'm all about that.
Yeah.
You know, I think we're doing 5 cities here, and then we're in Auckland, and afterwards we're in Hong Kong for a couple of nights.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of a whirlwind.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did that gig kind of come about?
It came up about 15 years ago. I was playing with Billy Childs, and Bobby Colomby had approached me about doing it, and I could just never make it for some reason. Our schedules were just never in sync, and so it happened that November there was a tribute to Tony Bennett. He was winning the Gershwin Prize, and Chris was on the gig, and they asked me if I could do it, and it just turns out I could. So
cool.
It was great.
Yeah. And so what's the kind of preparation for a gig like this? Like, are you guys rehearsing for a couple of weeks before you come out, or
no
it's like,
rehearsal at all?
Here's the music and we'll see you on stage kind of thing?
It's pretty much that.
Right.
Pretty much that.
Yeah. And then sound check, you just kind of run stuff.
You run it at sound check, and you sort of feel your way through.
Wow.
Everybody has their own way of doing it. I was able to take a look at Taylor Ikesley's charts, the piano player who was on the gig. He's on the gig sometimes, brilliant pianist.
Sure.
And I was able to get a reference from that because the music is constantly evolving.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So maybe the recording you had is different from how it's being played now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So it's quite improvised?
There's a good bit of improvisation on the gig. There's some set devices that happen, but it's just a lot of listening. Just keep your ears open.
Yeah. And so you're saying Chris is quite into tone?
Yeah.
How does that affect your approach to this gig? Have you?
Well, it's more what I'm about.
Yeah. Have you had to change anything up or approach things differently?
Feel-wise, I approach things a little bit differently. Maybe playing a little bit more on top or something like that. Okay. Because the instruments can be slow to speak. This great drummer, God rest his soul, Jimmy Paxson, who really walked Jimmy Paxson Sr. His son, Jimmy Paxson Jr. is great, and Charlie. Both of his sons are brilliant. Jimmy Sr., when I was a kid, I think I was 19 when I was playing with him, he sort of really was probably my greatest teacher for big band. And he just said a few simple things about how the instrument's slow to speak and where to sort of put it. And it opened up my mind to about how to approach different things.
Because you said you're playing mainly upright for this one.
This gig is about 70% upright. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So yeah.
Maybe more, maybe 80%.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's especially on the upright, there's that little fraction before the note enters the room.
Absolutely. And I'm playing on rental basses all the time.
Sure.
Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's, a challenge.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
So you won't have played the bass for tonight until you get to soundcheck?
Until I get to soundcheck.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you just got to deal with it?
Just got to deal with it. I brought my own bow, so for the rest of these, so I don't have to deal with a rental bow, so that'll be comfortable. But bows for me match the instruments too, so, and this bow doesn't always match each instrument.
Yeah.
But it's still good. Great bow by Carbo.
Electric? You got your own electric, or?
I have my own electric. I brought the signature model that I use most of the time, the candy apple red one, the rosewood fingerboard.
And that's straight 5-string jazz, or is that PJ?
That's the 5-string PJ.
5-string PJ, yeah.
Yeah. It's 5-string PJ, and I'm playing it passive.
Right.
I'm not playing it active. And the amps are usually rentals, but when I can get it, I use a super bassman because it just sounds so good.
Cool.
It's just a great amp.
And do you have the REDDI?
I don't have the REDDI with me because it's too much to bring.
Yeah.
It's impossible to bring. Otherwise, I would.
Yeah, sure.
Would
you say that's back home? Is that a pretty big part of your live?
That's integral.
Setup? Yeah.
Part of my live and studio setup.
Yeah.
Many cases I'll have two, one for clean sound and one for dirty sound.
You mean in terms of effects, or they're just driven differently? So okay.
In terms of effects, they're usually both set at 10 o'clock because it just seems to work best with my bass going to whatever mic pre's that they're using.
Yeah.
Most guys if a guy doesn't know anything, he'll think it's a mic pre and try to run it by itself. I'm like, no. It's just a DI. It's not just a DI, but it's a DI.
Yeah, I mean,
it's my favorite.
Yeah, maybe talk a little bit about your involvement with that, because you're kind of, I don't know, fairly connected with that. You're
Peter Montesi? Yeah, he's family to me. He's brilliant. The company's great. I use all of their products. I have for the studio setup, when I come self-contained and I just have to go right into Pro Tools or right into a 2-inch. Carl Johnson made a Ventura for me, so I have an old one that's all point to point, and then with Peter I've got the 503 with the P1 mic pre, then a BAC compressor, then EMP EQ, which is like a tiny little Pultec. Okay. And so I'll run, and Dave Perlman mic will go through the Ventura, and then either it'll be a Fishman, a full circle, or the David Gage, the Wood Realist, will go through the P1.
And then just kind of light touches on the EQ and the compression kind of thing. Yeah,
just barely.
Yeah, nice.
And for the electric bass, it's always the REDDI to a Pacifica, and BAC, but I have to admit, I work at a Tony Shepard studio a lot, so I use the Tube Tech, the C1, because it sounds great.
You spent a lot of time in the studio, I'm guessing,
over the years. I did over the years. Stanley Clarke was a huge influence in tone. He taught me a lot in the studio. We used to use like these Jensen preamps that he had. Yeah. Would be a Demeter, the old Demeter DIs.
I just got one of those with the Jensen output transformer.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
So that into kind of like a 1073 mic pre is kind of my chain. So similar to the REDDI into the EQ kind of thing.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's good. And then we would use an Inovonics compressor, which if you can find them, they're great. It's a little odd little box, beige faceplate, and just cream faceplate, just smoking. Yeah. I did a lot of movies with Stanley using that.
So Stanley's kind of producing, and he would hire you.
Oh yeah.
For the date.
Yeah, I did. This was way back in the day, so it's like Passenger 57.
Oh yeah.
I played on a lot of that, or What's Love Got to Do with It? The movie, just a bunch of different stuff with him over the years. You know,
because you'd think if you see Stanley Clarke, you know, music by Stanley Clarke, you just assume that he would be playing on it.
well, he would. I mean, but sometimes he was so busy composing. Steubenhaus had played bass on some of the stuff. I'd played bass on some of the stuff. Maybe Armand Sabalenko played on some of it too.
Yeah.
You know.
And so, what was your kind of path to being one of those session guys?
Lots of mistakes, lots of practicing, meeting people, being open. I guess where I differ from most of the guys is that I not most of the guys that my contemporaries, but most of the people that are trying to get into the business, they tend to be really closed-minded about it. Well, I only play this style, or I only play that style. Can't do that, and you have to be accepting of it. I mean, I like speed metal as much as I like a polka. You know what I mean? It's like I don't have a problem listening to different stuff because it's music. You know, in the Western world, it's, as Stravinsky would say, you have 12 notes and varying rhythms, which offers a world of possibilities.
Sure. And you know, there's good and bad music in every genre.
There's good and bad songs, yeah. In every genre of music.
For sure, yeah.
You know? And I think that's the only thing that I would tell to young people now.
Yeah.
You know, I remember I was doing this gig, and this happened to me twice. Two guys, man, I want to sub for you. I want to, you know, and I'm open to it, man. If I've got work and I can't make it, I'll call different guys. Because it was done for me. Jimmy Haslip and Abe Laborio used to recommend me. They didn't know me.
Oh.
You know, and that was like 87, 88. They didn't know me from Adam. You know, and so, well, this guy walked up. He says, man, I want to be your sub. You know, I want to do the gigs you can't make. I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's like, so you play a lot of upright? He's like, no, I asked him if he played with the bow. He said, no. I said, you play upright at all? He said, no. I said, you play bebop? I said, no. I said, you rock? I said, no. I said, no pick? I said, nope. I said, any pop music stuff? Fretless? He said, nope. I said, so what do you want to do? He's like, oh man, I want to do your R&B stuff. I was like, I'm not doing that stuff now. And it's happened to me twice. Two different guys have done that. I'm like,
that's strange.
And I asked him, I was like, do you read at all? He's like, no. Like, okay.
Okay. Yeah, I'll call you once every 5 years.
Yeah, if it should happen, you know. But there's so many other guys I could call that are reliable, because lots of times you just don't know what's going to happen on a gig. One doesn't know. It's like you could come there expecting to do one thing, and then suddenly it's like completely different.
Sure.
If you're unprepared, then. You know.
And has that happened? You've been kind of caught out, or you've always put it in the homework?
Well, there was one time, Kenny Wilde called me to do a session, called me to cover for him, asked me if I could cover for him on a date, and he said, there's a service that calls to tell you when it is. And so no one told me what the date was. So I sent all this electric gear. You know, there's my rack, I had a bunch of basses, and I walk in, and I see this composer that's passed on. He said, no, man, this is for Animaniacs.
Oh.
You know, so it's all, so I had to have my upright sent in, and so it's a completely different gig.
Totally.
Like, a lot of reading. I remember being on an Elfman session though once, and I was so nervous that the guy the conductor would say, we're starting on bar 2, and I screwed it up like 4 times because I was so freaked out.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's great that you were maybe in the industry at a point where there was enough work that you could kind of get by that, and there was dates coming up. It wasn't.
Yeah, well, you know, I mean, you can get by it. You can get pushed back on the list. It's like, I don't want to call that guy again. You know. So you try not to make too many mistakes.
For sure.
You know.
And so were you working in New York as well before early, or?
No, I was in New York. I was a kid, and I was just doing club gigs. You know, playing bars and stuff like that. You know, I was like 12, 13, 14 years old. So the ABC really didn't dig that too much. But as long as you don't go to the bar and sit and have a drink, you're cool.
Yeah, right.
My mom had hooked me and our band up with some gigs, and then we started to get our own gigs and
That's
stuff
awesome.
like that. Then as I got older, I just started working a lot.
Yeah.
You know. And then I moved to Atlantic City, like 15. I thought it was the worst thing in the world, but it turned out to be the best thing for me. Probably kept me from like killing myself, or, you know.
How so?
Just, you know, you kid in New York, you know, there's drugs, there's booze, there's chicks,
Yeah.
It's drugs, booze, chicks, drugs, booze, chicks, drugs, booze, chicks.
Music.
And some music too, yeah. Some music happens too. And so Atlantic City was a little quieter, a little bit more grounding.
A little cleaner.
And I had an awesome band director, this guy named Joe Brown, who's still around. And
so was that kind of cabaret stuff, or like
that was high school, but at the time I was doing club gigs, and then I was doing a cabaret sort of gig when I was 18, and then 19 I was doing the house band jobs. So if like Jerry Lewis would come to town, I'd play behind him, or Louis Anderson, or just about anybody.
And that would be generally reading, I'm assuming.
It's all reading.
All reading.
There is no. And it's not slash charts, usually reading stuff that's been scribbled over and written over, and and it's a lot of different fonts that you're getting used to, a lot of different handwriting, because that's the days before computer.
Yeah.
So you have different copyists.
Sometimes you get square dots, sometimes you get round dots.
Yeah, completely different copyists. So,
so that's kind of where you would really cut your pro teeth, you would say, or?
Yeah, I did. I mean, all through that, because I was always playing different stuff. Like while I was in Atlantic City, I used to play in a cover band, and I got together with friends and we do prog stuff. And some other friends, we played some Van Halen. Other friends like Serious Fusion, Return to Forever, Weather Report stuff. It was just all music, and that's.
So you really did love it all, or really do love it all.
Yeah. I mean, when I was 17, I went on the road with this sort of show band, and we were playing polkas, we were playing pop covers. He would make me write out a horn arrangement, which was good for me, and then make me sing sometimes. And then we were packing and loading the PA, and then we had to drive the trucks, all for $225 a week.
But it's made you who you are, or helped make you who you are to some extent. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. It was. I wouldn't do it again. I wouldn't go back and do it again. It's like
once is enough.
Yeah, once is 2 times too many. Actually.
Yeah.
I could have lived without that.
So what was kind of your first big break, so to speak? The kind of first session or gig you found yourself going, okay, I've gone up a level.
I think. So, Jimmy Paxson's ex-wife, Sonny Paxson, grew up with Stanley Clarke. And so Stanley and his then wife, Carolyn, who's a really good friend of mine, would take in all these strays for Christmas. And so I had met Stanley before, Stanley and George, like in the early 80s. And then we came there that Christmas, and then I sat with Stanley and Sonny, and we were playing some of the stuff that Sonny and I were working on, and Stanley put me to work the next day. So I started working for Stanley December 26, 1987.
Okay, so there was a job on the next day.
Yeah, and then I started playing on his movie stuff, and he was a mentor. I learned a ton from him.
And how old are you at this point, roughly?
22, 23, something like that.
Yeah.
I think I'm 23, yeah. Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So then from there, that's a door or
well,
a window.
Stanley turned me on to George Duke. George Duke got me a gig with Diane Reeves, and then I played with George as well. At the same time, I had met Billy Childs through this other percussionist, Ronnie Gutierrez, that I knew. And that opened up another door. And then I was working with this guy, Ted Perlman, he was a New York session guitar player. And his wife, Peggy Blue, used to sing, I mean, brilliant background singer, like the one that Streisand would call a group, and then, she could throw down. And she went on Star Search to try to make some money because they figured out the formula. And they won, which was brilliant. And so I started working for him and doing gigs with different people also. And I would meet all different people in different branches, which would open up stuff. That's the thing. If you stay in one pocket, one group of people, you're going to stay with that.
Yeah, there's a limit kind of thing to it.
Absolutely. absolutely. Like all my friends that don't play upright, that would complain that they were starving, and if I had a gig for them, I was like, if you play upright, yeah, I got plenty for you. You know, you just have to be open. So that's how it sort of blossomed in LA, and then just happened to be at the right place at the right time. Like I met Kurt Biscara through my friend Carl Burnett in 1988. And Kurt became one of my closest friends. He's the reason I got the Seal gig.
Okay.
It was like 94 or something like that. And we were doing a Belinda Carlisle Christmas record. And I had been playing with Babyface, and I just needed a change. And I think I got the Babyface gig through Rayford Griffin, because Rayford grew up with Kenny Edmonds. And I played with Rayford with Stanley and George. So it just all blossoms. And I was sort of burnt out on playing R&B stuff. And Kurt said, I'll call you back. And then I got the call for the Seal audition. They weren't going to hire me because I looked too clean, like physically. Looked too clean. He's like, can you like not bathe for a week?
You just can't win in the industry, right?
Just can't make that
too
stuff
clean,
up.
Too dirty, too tall, too short.
But I did that for 3 years.
So was that Seal was like an American band, or was it?
It was an all-American band, no Pro Tools, awesome band. It was Chris Bruce on guitar, who plays bass with Seal sometimes, who also plays with Michelle and Deggy cello.
Oh, cool.
Earl Harvin on drums, who played with Air and The, and Jamie Mahobrak on keys, who was like the synthesist of synthesists in LA. You know, he's on most Seal's first few records. That's pretty much Jamie's sound.
Okay.
And then, you know, he's on Tina Turner, he's on the Stones, he's that guy, you know. And it was just a killer band. That's the same band that's on MTV Unplugged.
Cool.
Yeah. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
So how many years was that?
3. I did it for 3 years, 95 through 98. I left to go on the road with Johnny Holiday.
Okay.
And played French pop for about 5 years. But I was still doing Bette Midler through that and Babyface. That's it was just lucky that I could have different accounts going, and I still had sessions going through that time. When I look back at that period, it's amazing I did that many records.
Yeah, nice.
You know,
any kind of record highlights in that period? Or?
During that period, I don't know. I don't think I had any real record highlights. It was just all good work. I mean, I played on some big tunes, you know, but was it just the recording stuff you did with Mariah Carey, or was that live work? I was just recording with Mariah. You know, the record highlight I still have to say is the one that we didn't get credit for. Paul Jackson Jr. is still mad that we didn't get credit. Oh. We did a Whitney Houston record. We did The Preacher's Wife, and it was produced. Mervyn Warren, who was with Take 6, produced the music, and it's JR on drums, me on bass, PJ on guitar, and then Mervyn on keys, and ridiculous production. But that was, sonically, it's great, and the music that Merv wrote was great, and the way it was executed was great. It was just fantastic. But they put all these photos of Whitney, so the only people that got credit was the choir band, which I think we replaced some of their music as well. So somebody's credited for what we did.
Really?
Happens. I've ghosted on a couple of records.
Okay.
Where the guys got endorsements where I couldn't get endorsements. I thought it was funny. So they got endorsements off of my playing.
So it kind of balances out over the grand scheme of things.
I don't know about that.
Okay.
I don't know about that. But it's cool.
And what kind of bass are you playing at this point?
I still have the Reggie Hamiltons, the signature models from Fender.
Sorry, I mean kind of like in that 90s.
In
early 90s.
Early 90s, I had a Squier jazz bass. I had a Federa 6-string, which was beautiful, that Vinny and Joey made for me. That I stopped using on recordings because everyone was requesting the jazz bass. So I had a white Squier with alembic pickups, and I added a 5th string. So it was like a $200 bass with pickups that are probably like $800 now, and I added a B string to it.
So it was B-E-A-D?
B-E-A-D-G.
Oh, so you actually made it into a 5-string?
Yeah, I made it into a 5-string, and I used it on, you know, I mean, people make jokes about it all the time, but I used it on all the stuff I did with Stanley. A lot of stuff I did for Babyface, like Gladys Knight, Boyz II Men, different stuff like that. I used it on working with Bette Midler. I used it working with Billy Childs.
Yeah, right.
I used it with George Duke. I used it with all kinds of people.
And nobody complained?
They didn't complain.
They didn't complain.
In fact, it was the most requested bass I had.
Sounds good, it is good.
I retired it in '96. I gave the body to Michael Braun, who is a designer at Fender. And I got the first Jazz Deluxes, one of the first Jazz Deluxes off the line. And I still love that bass.
Okay.
In fact, I still tour with that bass. I have that, and I have a matching fretless that Alex Perez made for me. So I still love those. And I use those exclusively from '95 up to 2000, when I designed the signature bass with Fender.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about that process. What was your goal, kind of, with that collaboration? I mean, what was it that you weren't getting that you wanted to have?
The goal was to have a bass that was comfortable for a guy that grew up playing 4-string.
Okay.
So if you look at the Elites or the later series Jazz Deluxe that were active passive, that's all from the Reggie Hamilton, minus the neck pickup and the fact that my bass is nitrocellulose, and those is that's a poly of some sort. So it was an asymmetrical neck, okay. 21 frets, because 24 frets in thumping, you just don't get the tone.
I think I agree with that. Something I've noticed is you're slapping at a further back point,
and you're hitting a lot of the harmonics.
Yeah, right.
You know, so you've got if it's smacking right against the 24th fret, then suddenly you're getting overtones instead of getting a great fundamental. So I also placed my neck pickup differently. It's a P-bass pickup, but it's placed so you can, normally in a P-bass you can't play any harmonics. So at this bass you can play all the harmonics.
So a little bit further back towards the bridge?
It's like in a split area. I mean, you can look at it now, and if you get one, it's between the 29th and the 32nd fret. Okay. So that way you get all the overtones you like, and you can have both pickups running and still have all the overtones. It's just a really tonally great instrument. It's fully active and fully passive. So you have bass, treble, mid-range, boost and cut, plus or minus 12 dB, and the preamp is naturally 6 dB hotter. They wanted to start with 9, but it was just too much. So if you can back things off a little bit, you can get a great blend between active and passive. Sure. And when it's passive, it's fully passive. It's a passive tone stack and a volume and a pan pot. So it does a pre-CBS fairly well.
Cool. Yeah. And do you miss just the straight JJ combination?
Well, I still have them. I still have those Jazz Deluxes, sure. And I still have my 67 Jazz, which I've had forever. And got another Jazz, an American Design, the original American Design. Okay. When they asked me to make one, and that's a gorgeous bass.
You ever going back to the Federa world, the 6-string kind of thing?
I have a Federa 5.
Okay.
It's I guess what's that, the Imperial?
Sure.
It's 26 frets, but it's one pickup. Okay. And it's active and passive, with no pots whatsoever. So it's either active or it's passive. That's it. Then I have a Federa 12-string. It's I bought this bass, it belonged to some other guy, and I just love it. It's 36-inch scale, and it's an Anthony Jackson presentation in seafoam green.
Wow.
Yeah. It's massive, but really, really good.
That must be a pretty unique sound.
It really is. It's lovely. Yeah. People laugh until they hear it. They're like, ah.
Special.
It's just, and the face is like, oh my gosh. And it's beautiful, stunning.
For sure.
But that's it for the Federa. I have the two Federas, and the rest of the electric basses are Fender. Oh, I have an Epiphone Jack Cassidy.
Okay.
Which is a great bass.
That's the kind of semi-hollow body.
Yeah, and Jack he's a sweet man, always very nice.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to play that bass because he did well.
Yeah.
He did well. It's like a 74 Les Paul, but it's got a thing. It's got character, and it's stable and solid.
P basses, couple.
I've got the Reggie Hamiltons. All the other P basses
So
I had.
you just wind off the back
Yeah.
pickup and then,
And all the other P basses I have, I gave away. You know.
Yeah. So you still get to play on that neck that you like, but with the P bass tone.
Exactly.
Win-win.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, I used to have a Reggie Hamilton 4-string that I bought from Damien Erskine when I was living in Canada.
One of my old students.
Yeah, really?
And Damien studied with me when he was like 9, 10 years old.
Okay, that makes sense.
I knew his grandfather, Peter Erskine's father.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
Where was that? Where
That was Atlantic City.
Right.
Yeah. He brought him to me. He was like smart little kid. He was funny.
Yeah.
And I used to always just stress fundamentals, which I still do. You know.
Well, you did a good job. He's turned out all right.
I think he's done a good job on his own. He's talented.
Yeah, and he's also a great educator now as well.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, he's got his own voice.
Yes, he does.
Definitely.
You know, and I dig that.
Yeah.
I dig that. So, you know.
Doing, I guess, speaking of teaching, is that something that you're involved in these days or have been?
Well, I was teaching a little bit this past fall. A friend of mine, great drummer, just passed away, Ndugu Chancellor.
Oh, yeah.
And he had recommended me for this gig. And so I had a bunch of young students. It's interesting with young students because in the 21st century, it's not a lot of them practice and put in the effort or the time. And especially these kids that have so much going on in LA. They're going from this practice to that practice, and their parents want them to do this, and their parents want them to do that, and you've got to do this, you've got to be up on your grades, you have to,
It's
and then
so much pressure.
Yeah, and the music becomes, academic more than for the love of it. So it becomes very difficult. And there were some talented kids there. Most times I just teach guys that want to brush up on something, and it's usually leaning more towards professionals.
Okay.
Or gearing kids up, like not in the orchestral sense, because I don't have those sensibilities. I mean, I can do basic stuff with them, but as far as jazz and electric bass, getting them college ready, that I can do.
So getting ready for Berkeley kind of thing,
or as I had a student, Joshua Crumbly, and I had had him go to my mentor, Alm McKibbon, and Joshua studied some with Victor, Bailey studied some with Marcus.
Okay, right.
And just getting him college ready. He got a full ride at Juilliard.
Nice.
I've had some kids at USC, or I had in the past. Just kids different places, or professionals. Like I remember Duff McKagan came to me for lessons some years ago. Then there's another teacher at USC who's a friend. He wants to take some lessons, working on some different stuff. Just working on concepts and how to approach things differently.
Sure. Yeah. I was going to say, I'd love to be a fly in the wall with a Duff McKagan.
Well, it's great because Duff's super cool. He's super smart. He just wanted to play with his fingers more and get inside of different things.
Yeah. He was one of my early kind of bass icons, so to speak. That first Guns N' Roses album. Oh yeah. That tone.
The first GNR, his tone is great. And he knows how to play with a pick. Yeah. So he just wanted to open some stuff up.
Great pocket as well.
Yes, he does.
That's good.
Killer pocket.
That's good groove.
Killer pocket.
I guess that's one of the things that, as bass players, it's kind of the remit of it's the job description is you got to groove no matter what the thing is. Everything has to groove to some extent.
It's bass players see it that way, but it varies. It's like in a changing world. There's a lot of people that have a bass that consider themselves bass players now. Some producers got a bass in the corner, and so he feels he plays bass well enough, and it'll sound pretty crappy on his record, and he's spent 12 hours trying to edit something that takes your eye 10 minutes to do. But it is what it is. It should groove. It should suit the music. I should say that. Yeah. It's like if you're playing in a particular band and everything is like really tight, it should have that tight sound, or you can't come to it. It's like coming to a restaurant and bringing your own ketchup that you pour all over your Chateaubriand. And it's like,
gotcha.
You have to sort of like be in the moment and be there.
You have to kind of be a little bit of a chameleon.
Absolutely.
But have your own. I guess that's the thing, is being able to fit in all these situations, but having your own signature. I think your own signature naturally comes out. One's own signature. It's like, if you spend enough time on the instrument.
Yeah. You and I can, it's like eating a hamburger. You and I can eat the exact same hamburger. It's gonna come out different.
Okay, we process things differently.
We process things completely differently. That's the best way I can put it, where everybody, oh yeah, right, that's true.
Yeah.
It's being attentive, studying the history of different things. It's like, who did Duff McKagan listen to? Or who did Jocko listen to? Or who did Stanley listen to? Who did Anthony listen to? Who did Paul Chambers listen to? Who did Pops Foster listen to? Who did Wilbur Ware listen to? Who did Sam Jones, Mingus, Pops Popwell, Jimmy Haslip? Who did these guys listen to help them be who they were? So getting an understanding and going further and further back and studying the history. Who did John Coltrane listen to? Who did Sonny Rollins listen to? You just have to keep going further back.
Okay. And when you were, I guess, in your 13, 14 development stage as a player, who were kind of some of the bass guys that you were really delving into?
Well, first was Verdine White.
Cool.
Actually, that's not true. First was now his name escapes me. Played bass with Chicago.
Jimmy Earl? No, I'm thinking.
No. And he ended up singing for Chicago. Peter Cetera.
Oh.
Peter Cetera, yeah. Edit, cut. Yeah, so the first guy was Peter Cetera, Chicago, because I had studied with this bass player, this tall brother with a big afro named Art, and he played a Gibson EB3. And an EB3L, too. And we would sit and play along with Chicago tunes for $4 a lesson.
So this is just private lessons at home,
yeah.
Kind of thing?
Yeah, and he was like 3 blocks away from my place. And then my first real bass teacher was Kim Clarke, who played with Joe Henderson and played with Defunct, with Joe Bowie, who's still playing, and she's still killer. So she had me studying through Samandel and things like that. But as I started to listen, I listened to Billy Cox as a kid, and I listened to different bands. There was like New Birth and BT Express, but Earth, Wind & Fire like struck a chord. And which was, I found out later, was really Louis Satterfield playing on a lot of the early stuff along with Verdine. At least that's what I'm told. Okay. Sorry, Verdine. I don't know if that's true or not.
I'd be surprised if he catches this, but
yeah, you never know.
You never know.
Verdine he's
on it,
omnipresent. I listen to Earth, Wind & Fire a ton.
Yeah.
And this first band I was in, I got kicked out of the band because I didn't play with my thumb.
Normally it's the opposite.
Yeah. Normally it's like the guy plays too much. And so I happened to be listening, there was a band called Brainstorm.
Okay.
And Dion Estes, who used to play with George Michael, he was like 18 years old. There's a song called On Our Way Home. If you just go to YouTube and find it. I forget the girl who's singing, she passed on. She was amazing. But Dion, it starts out boom, 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 and it struck me. It was really great. And then I was listening to Stanley, of course.
Larry Graham.
I listened to Graham, but I didn't get into Graham really until I was about 15, 16.
Okay.
I mean, I had heard all the stuff. I probably got into Lewis before I got into Graham. I got into Graham listening to the arrangements. All the arrangements struck me, you know, because I wasn't really focused on playing with my thumb still. I did it because I had to do it.
Right.
You know. But I listened to the other stuff first. But then Stanley got hold of me, and it's like, you know, you get your first Stanley Clarke record, and it's like, because the bass wasn't prevalent then.
Sure.
And then I guess I was in junior high or my first year of high school, and I heard Jaco. There's this kid I knew named Brett Sims who was funky, always played with one finger, and he played this Univox bass, always on the back pickup, and he had this groove that was, I haven't still to this day, I haven't heard anybody play like that. But he and I sat and listened to Portrait of Tracy, and we listened to Donna Lee, and then we just sat silent for a while, because it was his brother's record, and his brother played bass too.
Wow.
He played this Travis Bean fretless. But we just sat in silence. We're like, I don't even know what that is. You know?
Yeah, I think most people, after they have that experience, they just kind of, you're just in awe.
Yeah, but then I heard Jeff Berlin, who's, I mean, still to this day, as far as an improviser goes, I mean, just listen to Water on the Brain. I doubt seriously that he constructed it. I think he just went in and threw down. That's some of the best bass soloing I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, just unbelievable.
And so did you kind of want to be a solo guy?
I wanted to be, but I wanted to eat. You know, the problem was, you know, being young and immature and not having like steady guidance on a musical level. I took all that stuff to gigs, which really wasn't, you know, I wasn't like Marcus. Marcus was super mature early on. Like I could walk to school. I used to walk to school in high school and I could hear Marcus practicing. You know, I mean, like every day. And he was just super together. But he was, you know, he was 19 playing with Lenny White, like that Streamline record, which is brilliant. You know, and he was on top of it. That's why Miles loved him so. That's why everybody loved him so.
Yeah.
So I didn't have the maturity and the discipline to not play unnecessary stuff for a while. And so it took a minute. Once I thought about tone, through Stanley, really. It's funny, the guy that, you know, influenced me to play so much was a guy that influenced me to not play so much, just from a talk about tone. So from a different aspect, I mean, we talked about upright tone, how hard to attack the instrument before it starts to choke. You know, it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. You know, I never thought about using different strings on an upright. You know, like maybe 2 strings from one company and 2 from another, all for the sake of tone.
Sure.
Yeah, it was just wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Paratucci, was it, because that was kind of about when he was really coming to prominence, the kind of late 80s, early 90s. His upright tone, was that a thing that you were?
No, I didn't want John's upright tone.
No.
I mean, I like John.
Yeah.
I like John, and you
His
know, he's a wonderful guy.
His tone's really evolved.
Yeah, I would definitely say it has. Yeah, I never wanted John's electric tone or his upright tone. His soloing on 6-string was beautiful, and his soloing on upright is quite beautiful. But it wasn't my focus. It was my point of reference. I wanted to have Alm McKibbon's tone. You know, he was like a father to me, and when I was a kid and I was listening to stuff and watching TV and listening to stuff, that was the guy I was listening to.
Okay.
And when I go back to the stuff that I sing now, if I go back and sing stuff that was in my childhood, it's all the stuff he played on, and I can sing those bass lines. And spending time with him talking about tone was a whole other thing. That was like a total mind throw, you know. Man, I mean, here's a guy that played on Birth of the Cool, and he didn't play on all of it because he was busy. He told Miles he couldn't do the whole record because he was busy with Monk at the 5 spot. He played on Manteca with Dizzy, so in some circles he's known as the father of Latin jazz bass. He's on the original Odd Couple TV show, He's on the original Batman. This is the same guy.
Wow.
You know, and this is all stuff that I watched religious. You know, he was on like the Red Skelton show, different things like that. Played with Sammy, played with George Shearing. I mean, he played with Sinatra, he played with Bird, he played with did all sorts of gigs. And so that was the tone I was going for.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
And he had a magnificent tone.
Yeah. So when you, because you released a solo record not that long ago?
14 years ago.
14 years ago? Was it really?
14
I
years
guess,
ago.
you know, early 2000s still seems like.
Yeah, it's a,
okay.
when you hit a certain age, it's like all relative.
Another one, or was it just a?
I've got another one in the works.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is just sitting down and wanting to take the effort to do it, because it's, you know, for me it was a labor of love. It's not like something I'm going to like sell like 100 million copies. I'm not going to be like Taylor Swift or something like that. You know, it's elaborate stuff. The first one was cool. Billy Childs is on it, George Duke's on it, Sheila E.'s on it.
Cool.
And yeah, it was just a labor of love.
Yeah. And that was just the stuff that you'd been kind of accumulating over your.
Actually, no. I wrote a lot of it then. I have even more stuff. You know, well, some of the things, like there's the title cut and the tune "Letter to Deb," which is my sister, were film cues for something that I was writing from Babyface in '94. I was writing some underscoring stuff, which they ended up going with all pop songs. It was a weird movie about euthanasia and two elderly people, and they went with pop songs, which is, I thought was bizarre. So those pieces I'd written for like chamber groups, and I recorded two piccolo basses, and I just turned them into tunes, you know, which was cool. And George plays great on it, and then Dino Saldo plays harmonica on the other one, and James Harris playing guitar, and Kurt Biscayer's playing drums. You know, it was just sort of a thing. And there's one tune on there, Speechless, which I wrote with Bob Leatherbarrow, but we did it on his record with Mitch Foreman and Ernie Watts, and that's all straight ahead. And then I wanted to do a different take on it, so it's half bebop and half electronic.
Okay.
You know. I think the biggest problem for me when I did that record was every solo that I took was just off the top of my head. I didn't take the time to really construct it or do my overdubs or anything like that. I was like all purist about it. Even though I was in Pro Tools, I did destructive recording for everything.
Wow.
So what you see is what you get on that.
Okay.
You know, there's no real overdubs. I didn't fix any of my bass stuff. That's just
cool.
like, boom. You know.
So you'd probably approach that differently now?
I may. I'm not quite sure.
Or get
I
all
think
the
maybe
guys
I'll just practice more.
Just get all the guys in the room and record to tape?
Yeah. I would like that better.
Yeah.
I would like that a lot better. You know, because I have tunes. I might have another 20 tunes. It's deciding how far into the forest I want to go in either direction. Like,
do you reckon it'll be a broad spectrum, or maybe
like the last one? It maybe I may do interludes again.
Yeah.
You know, I love doing the interludes because it's just like boom, boom, boom. You know. There's one where I think it starts out with synths and then it's just two basses. It's like a fretless and a fretted. And I was at Tony Shepard's place trying out, I think we were trying out a preamp or something like that. We might have been testing the REDDI at that time. And so I just recorded those two parts and that was it. It was just...
And that became a thing.
And I did all the interludes like that. The first one was just basses, and then I added the other basses. I sent it to Gary Carr. He was like shocked. He's like, I didn't know you were going to have that up front. It's like, he was really happy about that. So that was cool. And then there's one with, it's like two uprights. So it's almost like a dedication to Stanley because I played some of his licks. And then another electric one where I used a loop of Erskine.
Oh, really?
Pete said I could use his name. I was like, no, wait until I have you actually play on it, play on something cool.
Yeah. Was that a loop that you cut yourself?
It was something, yeah, I turned it into a thing in 7.
Cool. Yeah. So you kind of, I mean, you really embody the modern working professional bassist, in that you can produce, you can record yourself, you can you know, mix an album, you can read, you can do bop, you can do the pop thing, you can do the R&B thing.
I can't mix. I couldn't mix my way out of a paper bag. I leave that to professionals. Just saw Cliff mix that record, and he did a great job. You know. But
you know, it's being able to cover all those things has kept you working.
Kept me working. You know, just playing different types of music kept me working. And I know how to record myself. That I know how to do. And I know how to set up mics for drums or for an orchestra or for vibes or piano. I know where to place things. You know, you do enough sessions and keep your mouth shut and watch enough, you can learn some cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, it's in a world where, I mean, you know, it's tough for me because it's this whole YouTube world. I was doing a session with Vinny one day, and I think I called them armchair Caesars. He thought it was the funniest thing because it's what it is. It's kind of like,
up or down.
And this guy, it's some guy sitting in a chair in front of a computer. I was like, get out and do something. Get out and do something yourself. If you're busy doing something yourself, you don't have enough time to judge somebody else's stuff. You're doing your own thing. So I'm just trying to get out there and do my stuff. You know, there's good days, bad days. Yeah. I remember when I was young and I wasn't working enough, or I was ambitious and wanted to work. You know, which is cool. But I'm cool.
Is there any anything you would have said to a young Reggie to kind of give him hope or a bit of advice, if you could?
Practice more and be ready for whatever comes.
Yeah.
You know, be ready. Spend less time with chicks. Spend less time goofing off.
Just put the work in there.
Put the work in and take some time for yourself.
Yeah.
Travel. Study languages more. You know? I mean, I halfway speak some languages.
Yeah.
You know,
enough to get an espresso in most places in the world.
I can get an espresso just about any place in the world. I know how to say that. Yeah. Stay healthy, stay fit.
Yeah. Do you find that difficult on the road, or?
I think it's imperative that we take our vitamins. We try to be, you know, because it's very easy to get complacent. You know,
you can
sit
make
around.
Dietary choices, I guess, that kind of thing.
Have to.
Yeah.
Have to. You know, pick and choose how much partying you want to do, how many carbohydrates you want to eat, things like that. Yeah. Especially now, I'm getting older. You know, so it's important. It's important. Yeah, and keep listening to other music.
Is there some?
I didn't have that problem.
You're always listening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was always listening. I mean, if you look through my music selection, there's my daughter's stuff is in there, which is really good. Then it's like Audio Slave, Adam Rogers.
That first Audio Slave album is unreal.
It's awesome. It's awesome. It's a great record. You know, Adam Rogers, who's brilliant. I think that was, I think it's The Invisible. Is that record? Is that the record? And it just goes and goes. You know, there's Beatles. There's Hindemith. There's Elliott Carter. There's Beethoven. There's
Hendrix.
There's tons of Hendrix. There's Zepp, there's Mahavishnu, there's Weather Report, there's RTF, there's David Sancious, there's Eric Whitacre, there's just about everything. Yeah. Everything. Bulgarian Women's Choir, Joni Mitchell, you know.
Anything...
Justin Curry.
Anything happening just now that's kind of piqued your interest? Recent times?
For music's sake?
Yeah.
For me personally, no. It's just, I think I've piqued my interest. Like I've sort of rediscovered me, so I find myself shedding. I mean, there's lots of great bass players out.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it's a neat thing. There's lots of great bass players to listen to, and you understand their concepts. You know, I don't necessarily want to try to play like anybody, just develop my technique so that I can play whatever I want.
Yeah.
you know, or whatever I hear or whatever somebody asks of me without it being any sort of problem. You know, sometimes it can be difficult.
Yeah.
You know, when someone puts something like, or if your brain, just to keep my concentration together. I remember doing a session the other day where it was, and you know, it was dotted quarter, eighth note, double dotted quarter, and a 16th, and I just kept playing it as dotted quarter eighth, and I had to put my glasses on. It was like, and I had to get my mind in that spot, and it was like super simple. I mean, it's like, it should be like
just a glitch
rolling off a duck. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know, it's like fixing the glitches, but I keep forgetting. I am getting older. You know.
No. Well, man, we're going to wrap it up there because you've got to go to sound check.
Yeah, I have to go.
Yeah, I have to go.
Yeah, it's about that time.
Yeah. Really appreciate you taking the time, man.
It was an absolute pleasure.
Great talking to you. Reggie Hamilton, everybody.
Take care.
Cool, man. Thanks.
The seven seas. See, Christ had 12 apostles, and 3 he led away. Said, watch with me 1 hour, till I go yonder and pray. The holes that ride